Hey everyone, this is Elenbaas from Nightlight Astrology. Today I am very excited to bring you horoscopes for the upcoming solar eclipse in the sign of Virgo, and I'm extra glad to bring you them with my friend and colleague Ari Moshe Wolf, who is an evolutionary astrologer. If you watch my channel, you know in the past year I had him on and we did a really fun series kind of comparing and contrasting the Hellenistic and evolutionary viewpoints of astrology and how we read charts. Ari's a longtime friend and dear colleague of mine, so I'm really glad to have him here. We were discussing recently the burden of horoscopes and how much easier it is to actually do them when you do them with a friend or a colleague. So we thought, well, let's do some solar eclipse horoscopes, and we'll fuse together my Hellenistic approach and his evolutionary approach and give you some thoughts on all 12 signs. So that's what we're going to do today. But before we get into it, remember to like and subscribe. We're seeing if we can get to 100,000 subscribers on the channel by next summer of 2026. Every little subscribe helps us get there. Every thumbs up. Dropping a comment in the comment section, it all helps a lot. You can find transcripts of any of these daily talks on my website, which is nightlightastrology.com. When you are over there, there's a couple of promotions that I want to go through very briefly here today before Ari and I get into it. First and foremost, if you go to the events page, click on Immersive Retreat. The early bird rate for our retreat to Mexico that is next June of 2026 ends the first week of October. So you have just a little bit of time left to save a significant amount on the cost of that retreat. We'd love to have you come with and study astrology in a brand new training program. You can check everything out if you want to know more about it. There's a video on that page that will tell you all about it. Hope to see some of you there. Also, this weekend, we have a in-person event, a fall equinox gathering here at the Grapevine Collective, which is being held at the New City Center in Minneapolis. This is free to attend. We're going to get together, do a little movement, meditation, some talk about the equinox, what it means, how we can set it as an important moment of ritual. And all you got to do is RSVP, tell us you're coming. That way we bring enough tea and cookies. Also, go to the events page, click on live talks. I'm doing a new series on planetary combinations, planetary pairings, looking at the first principles of the planets, the archive philosophically from the ancient standpoint. That series begins on September 25th with Mercury. So check that out. If you can't attend live, you get the recording of the webinar afterward. And then finally, we are now in enrollment for our first year class, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. Begins again in November. There's an informational video about the course tagged on to the end of today's content, so you can learn more about it. You can also find that informational video on the first year course page. You scroll down, it's there, and everything you need to know about the course is there as well. All right, well, on that note, I am really happy to have my friend and colleague Ari back to the show. Hey, Ari.
Hey, Adam.
It's good to be back.
Great to be with you.
Yeah, it's we're recording this right now between the lunar eclipse and the solar eclipse. And you know, eclipse season tends, one of the ways that I talk about it, Ari, is that if reality includes the interplay of light and dark, then these eclipses are times that tend to amplify in their mirroring power the play of light and dark. So the interplay of light and dark becomes really enhanced. Our awareness of the interplay of light and dark is very powerful, whether we're thinking of that as good and evil or yin and yang. But it's like these eclipse series or windows that we come through tend to intensify our awareness of the interplay of opposites in so many different areas of life. And they become, for many people, some of the most regular horoscopic content of the year. Like my channel always spikes during horoscope season, or during eclipse season. Everyone's very interested in what's happening.
Right. My approach is very similar. I just frame it as during these eclipse windows, there's often an acceleration of our own evolutionary dynamic. And so there can be these boons, so to speak, of the path that are just emerging right now to be integrated and things really take on. But it can also highlight where something fundamentally needs to shift, kind of exaggerating the darkness or that which is impeding our ongoing growth, so that it can be cleared. So it just really accentuates whatever needs to be moved forward at that time, one way or another.
Yeah, I love that way of putting it. Ari, if you guys don't know Ari's work, I'm going to tell you how you can connect with Ari today before we sign off. But Ari is, I would say, one of the current luminaries and leaders of evolutionary astrology, the field. I know he wouldn't describe himself that way. I do, because I think that he's a very good example of someone who's really immersed themselves in the school and the tradition and lives and walks it with a spiritual commitment to life. And so I really appreciate that more than anything in astrology, more than any school or doctrine or way of looking at things. I appreciate people who their hearts are in it for the right reasons. And so on that level, although I practice Hellenistic, Ari's coming from the evolutionary approach, we're going to put them together for you guys today, and trust that really the spiritual integrity behind our different schools is what will come through to you, regardless of which school you may be more familiar or inclined to as you're listening to this as well. The evolutionary perspective, Ari, do you want to say anything about it just briefly to give a little bit of context? Everyone's very familiar with Hellenistic on my channel, so maybe just a word or two about the Hellenist or the evolutionary perspective.
Briefly, it's about looking at everything, transits, natal chart, from the perspective of this life being an ongoing evolutionary journey. So whatever's arising, it's a part of the template for the ongoing journey of self-realization, right? It's a slow journey, it's a very long journey, but we're all in this experience to realize more of the truth, more of what we are. So we interpret everything through that lens and kind of tune into what's the evolutionary intention? How is this bringing forward our own growth at this time?
Yeah. For those who don't know some of the technical differences, if you want to learn about those technical differences, I'm going to have some links to a previous series of talks that Ari and I did together, exploring kind of comparing and contrasting techniques and philosophy. And it turns out that Hellenistic astrology and evolutionary astrology share a lot of roots philosophically and spiritually, which is where I think we can really come together as practitioners from different backgrounds. We both look at the birth chart as the something of a mapping of the soul's evolution in a lifetime, and that much we can agree upon. The techniques are different, but if you want to learn about all that stuff, there'll be some links so you can check it out. What we're going to do now is we're just going to roll right into horoscopes for you. I'm going to put the real-time clock up and show you the date of the eclipse so that we're reminded of the timeline that we're talking about. So we are meeting, you're listening to this on Thursday, September 18th. The eclipse is taking place on Sunday, September 21st. And if we back this up just a little bit, you'll see that the exact conjunction of the sun and the moon at the 29th degree of Virgo is happening late afternoon on Sunday the 21st. That's Central Time, USA. So you may have to, this may be adjusted a little bit if you're on the East Coast or West Coast or in another country, but basically it's coming through here this weekend. And one thing to note about eclipses that sometimes I think we can forget to mention is that they're very powerful omens of change, and the changes that they indicate are not one-off events that happen only on the day of an eclipse. They are often, in the case of a solar eclipse, which is actually always, solar eclipses are new moons, they will often be like a gateway or the planting of the seed of a new cycle, or new themes, new timelines, new directions for the soul that will spread out over many years. Nodal returns happen every 9 and 18 years, flipped and direct, or flipped and exact. And so it's really helpful to not just think too concretely about what's happening this weekend, but to think about what's happening around the eclipse and how it spreads forward through time in new cycles of evolutionary and karmic activity. Is there anything you want to add to that, Ari?
Yeah, if you just think of the nodes as portals through which the soul's evolutionary journey is carried from the past to its ongoing experience, we have in this moment, underneath the surface of appearances, so many past experiences that are being brought forward right now to be resolved and integrated. There's so much more to this life that we're experiencing that is beyond just linear, sequential A to B to C. There's a deeper karmic reality to the soul experience in this incarnation. So the nodes are sort of the portal of that experience, where we're coming from and the ongoing experiences that we're wanting to have as a part of this journey. So if we think of these eclipses as highlighting the essence of these nodal energies, these are sort of markers in time where the core evolutionary dynamics that are moving through on this human experience are significantly highlighted. So it can really bring a significant shift, a clearing, time to move on to a new phase, all of the things that you said.
Yeah. Well, on that note, what we're going to do is we're going to alternate starting your horoscopes. We'll go Aries through Pisces. And then we'll fill in and add to each other's thoughts as we go through each. This is by whole sign, and all horoscopes work like that, regardless of how you may interpret your natal chart with a house system. For example, I know Ari uses porphyry. I use whole signs. But in horoscopes, it's always a whole sign layout when you're writing them. And so I would recommend listening for your rising sign, because that's going to correspond with the whole sign house version of your birth chart. But that's a Hellenistic preference, really, because of whole sign houses. I think a lot of people listen to their sun sign. Some people even listen to their moon sign. But you can listen to whatever sign you usually listen to, is the point. Let's get into it, starting with Aries. I'm going to start us off, and then Ari's going to fill in, and then we'll flip-flop as we go through the zodiac. With Aries, we have the solar eclipse taking place in your 6th house. And I'm just going to highlight it here. Obviously, it's in Virgo. It's with the south node of the moon. And so one of the things that comes to my mind would be about maybe some insights that are crystallizing around the distribution of time and energy and effort and work. So, for example, we are all usually forced in some area of life to chop wood and carry water. As an astrologer, there's a certain amount of administrative work that I have to do every day, and emails that I have to answer, or learning that I have to do, or developing of curriculum that happens. And it's not my favorite part of the work, but it's a necessary sacrifice to keep the flames of the practice burning or the business burning. And so I think about the expenditure of time, money, energy, and resources that are all acts of sacrifice for something larger that I believe in, or some greater work that I'm doing. And so to me, a 6th house eclipse like this could be about reorienting. Well, what's worth your time and energy? What's worth your sacrifice and commitment? What's worth the labor and effort? What are you dedicated to? And is it something that really serves your soul? Because if we're gonna work and sweat under the heat of the sun, so to speak, then it probably helps if the labor and sacrifice, the sense of service, is being done for something that has a transcendent function or purpose in our life. So that's what comes to my mind for this eclipse, is really honing in on, and that could also play into, like, are you exhausted? Are you depleted? Because sometimes those are like barometers for, I mean, any sacrifice could be a little draining, even if it's for something good. But ideally, the kinds of sacrifices, efforts, and labors that we're putting into something, when there's a transcendent function behind it, it often has a way of reciprocating and filling us up somehow. That seva, if you think about that seva, that selfless service, that can be like drawing well from a water, even if it's expending energy as well. So those are some of the things that come to my mind with this eclipse for Aries. What do you think, Ari?
So I'm going to start by highlighting, and this is probably true. It is true for all of these placements. We really need to consider, along with this eclipse, the presence of its opposition to Saturn, Neptune.
Mm-hmm.
It's like the exact midpoint opposition, 29 degrees Virgo, right here. And this is very powerful. So this strongly highlights that theme between, you can think of the Saturn, Neptune as the lightening of the load, in a sense. All of the judgments, the conditions, the structures, what we've been identified with, what we've given value. There's a big reorganization of that, restructuring on a higher level of consciousness. The Virgo dimension is, okay, how do you apply that? How do you live this purity, this love, this greater meaning that you can access on one level with this Saturn in Pisces, right? Like, okay, all of the judgments, the rules, it all dissolves me. Realize that love is the highest rule here, like that God is the ultimate reality. And then Virgo is all of the knit grit, the parts of our life where it's just hard. We have to deal with things. There are things to fix and improve. So highlighted in the 6th house. And I'm also considering with all of these that the South Node can have that quality of, there are many things that are maybe ready to be integrated that we've been working on, but can also bring up an existing stress of, oh man, I don't want to have to do this again. So here in the 6th house, I think it highlights the messiness of what's disorganized, unresolved, like where we come off the retreat medicine space and it's all beautiful and clear, and then we're in this intricate part of our life where it's like the kitchen is messy and our life has all these problems. So there might be this calling to like really chop wood and carry water, like really step into this is where the work is. Trust it, take it one step at a time. There's a lot of healing and spiritualization happening through that. And it could be many of the confusing and hard details that have otherwise been present in our life can really resolve. I think the invitation is to bring humility and availability to show up for where the work is and to trust the process, as organized or disorganized as it might appear to be. Just show up for it.
Yeah. Yeah. That's so well said. Thinking about my wife who is having a nodal return, flipped nodal return, I should say. And she's got it in Virgo and Pisces. And she just said the other day, I feel like the organizing of the closets and the drawers and the purging and the yard sale, all these things that she's been doing since South Node entered Virgo, are not just clearing spaces. It's something about my consciousness. So it's like that mundane attention to detail is so much more than that with these eclipses in Virgo.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah. Let's go on to Taurus, and Ari will start us off here. And I'm just going to circle the presence of the eclipse. And then what I'll do too, just to make sure we're not forgetting, like I almost did, is I'll just point in the opposition to Saturn and Neptune.
Cool. So we all have different gifts and skills and capacities. And the issue with this placement can, on the one hand, be this permeating self-doubt and self-criticism. I'm never ready enough or good enough to actualize and share my gifts. So this placement can really highlight this strong sense of unactualized, not ready. And the calling is to just show up for what we're here to tend. There can be this sort of very distorted self-focus with Virgo in the 5th, where we're consistently focused on what's wrong with us, why we're not beautiful enough, why we're not ready enough, why our presentation isn't ideal. And so there may be gifts that want to be shared and unique capacities that want to be expressed. So that, that Pisces polarity kind of helps us get outside of this very strong, narrow self-focus and work on your projects, work on your gifts, work on whatever want to be creatively actualized. And if we've been putting something off, it's going to feel horrible, right? Like the painting that we haven't completed, or the project or the class or whatever we're wanting to bring forward, this really puts a high level of stress to show up for it and to surrender concern with outcome and neuroticism around how it looks or what happens next.
Yeah, I love that. As a Taurus rising, I'm thinking about the fact that I have one chapter left in the book I'm writing.
Oh, cool.
And it is just like the first book I wrote, the last chapter was the hardest because it felt like I have obviously not given birth, but it felt like this is the last push, this is the actual delivery of the creative product. And there's so much about, like you just said, about perfectionism that I'm realizing exists in me right now. Like, I don't want to finish this because then I have to let it go. Then it will be closer to going out. I mean, it'll be editing and stuff like that, but like, then it's going to be out in the world. When it's in process, there's so much for me that can still, I still have control over all of it. So I really see what you were saying there in myself right now, just to start with that. But I wonder about new creative avenues that are opening as others are closing, almost like the juxtaposition of the South Node, which can bring old things to resolution, while a solar eclipse can often launch new beginnings. That might seem contradictory, but sometimes it's a matter of like a creative reorientation with a pairing like this. I've found that solar eclipses with the South Node in the 5th house over time in my practice will often coincide with not maybe an abandonment of something that you're not getting joy from any longer creatively, but I found pretty consistently that people will simply reorient a different creative approach, different angle. Sometimes it's a new instrument someone's picking up for the first time, or putting down one creative medium for the interest of another, or something like that. So I really wonder about direction of the soul and direction of creative acts coming together somehow. And then also, to me, anything, if you're a parent, anything around pregnancy or children or creative acts that can be, I mean, our children are sort of a great creative act, and they also become mirrors for something essential about who we are, their childlike wonder, their childhood process of growth. there's a lot about the spirit of children that live in this house. And so I would pay attention to some of the lessons crystallizing on that front right now as well.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go forward to Gemini. I'll start this one out, and I'm going to highlight this solar eclipse for Geminis is in your 4th house, where the opposition to Saturn Neptune occurring across the wheel. And for me, what comes to my mind right away, I've been looking in my masterclass series this 2025. We've been looking at the ancient Vedic meanings of the houses, and one of the meanings of the 4th house was moksha, as in like liberation or release from karma in the world. But the interesting connotation of the 4th house is that the home and the private sphere of life that you return to after working out in the world for the day, which was common in the ancient world to have to go work in the field or your farm or work for someone else at their shop or whatever. When you came back to your home and you released from public and social identification, that was thought to be a very small microcosmic worldly reflection of release from the world of karma itself. Like this little refuge that we can go to where the soul gets to have this almost like homeopathic drop dose of moksha, sleep, rest, quiet, peace, release from the world. What I find is so interesting is that one of the things that also exists here for us is a lot of wounding in childhood around home, family roots, and what did or didn't make our childhood environment a place that we felt safe, a place that we felt rest and release, all of which can become really problematic when it comes to trying to find in a later life, adult life, different stages of life, release from suffering or the world. It's not uncommon for people to seek release through addiction or codependency or all sorts of problems, because maybe at our roots, we never had a feeling of the home being a sanctuary of release from the world, from more worldly identifications. Even if it's just a gradation of that release, it still provides a meaningful template: relaxation, peace, rest. So I wonder if there's, for Geminis right now, if there's an opportunity to start a new cycle, to release old traumas, to look at some of the causes of dis-ease or stress or anxiety that exist around the roots of home, family, ancestry, and to think about what a new peaceful environment might look like. It's almost like a chance for purification and greater ease or rest or release from the world that can be created in the home space or a more private or interior space by letting go of the past somehow.
Wow. Just this morning, I was thinking about the word moksha, which isn't in my mind. So I just love that you brought that up. My nickname used to be Hari Moksha. It's like
Nice.
one Indian dance class I took many, many years ago. One thing I should say, with all of these placements, wherever Virgo is, while it has a quality of service to it, in the sense that we're not necessarily like, here I'm in service, but we're serving the process of life, where we're showing up to tend to whatever is here. So this is bringing that into the domestic sphere, and that could be, getting up and getting lunch ready for your kids and driving them to school and cleaning up the dishes while you have 5 minutes in between tasks, right? There can be this very heightened mundanity, and the stress can feel like we're being like drawn into this, like life is just stressful and chaotic and it's all about management. And that can internally reflect this inner sense of, I can never feel rested. I love that you brought in this idea of bringing this concept of like mini moksha in the rest environment of home. That really reframes this Virgo in the 4th as, this is a temple that we're tending, right? I'm sweeping the floors of the of the temple, and making the bed and orienting my attention to the holy, the sacred that life is really about. And that's really a Saturn 10th house, Pisces, that this world is an illusion. Only God is real, right? Just dissolving all of the knit and grit of the details and the forms and accessing a higher dimension of truth. So it's being in service to what requires our presence, but our care, our attending, whatever that is, where we're nurturing the roots, the ground, bottom of the chart of our identity, of our life, to hold space for the sacred.
Oh, I love that. Yeah. I heard this said by one of my teachers in the Bhakti tradition, which is that love for the deity is love for the temple, and love for the temple is love for the deity.
Love that.
He was saying that this is a big part of the life of brahmacharis, when they're the young monks. That's like, oh, I'd rather be in my practices. I don't want to be sweeping the temple or doing the seva around the temple. And it's like something that's being communicated to 14, 15-year-old kids that are in monastic mode for a period of time before they go into family mode or whatever, is no, care for these things is the practice. There's no difference between the meditation and the care for the physical environment of the temple. I feel like that's so present in so many different indigenous traditions and temple traditions. The care of the land that you live on, or it's the physical
setting up of spaces.
Yeah. Well, let's move on to Cancer.
Okay. So I'll do this
and I'll just highlight this for you. Go ahead.
So on the one hand, this actually can correspond to the culmination or the synthesis or integration of a long-term study. Imagine you're researching, you're practicing, you have your apothecary, you're collecting all the herbs and the data and the encyclopedias and all the astrological knowledge. There comes a point where the linear knowledge and information is no longer useful. It becomes a deficiency. I don't have enough, so I have to keep on gathering data or practicing or testing. We have to be able to release all of our learning and all of the knowledge and information, not be perfect, because that's never what happens here, but bring it over to higher meaning and service. That might be teaching or beginning to offer your knowledge or your skills in a way that's of service and value. So it's important to be able to tune into, is it time to let go and kind of bring my studies to culmination? Or on the other hand, is there something new that I'm now really being drawn to practice? If we're being lackadaisical or unquick and not bringing precision into our studies or our writing or our research, this might be kind of bringing us very clearly to where there is something more to be practicing and learning, because we want to be thorough. That's one part of this Virgo. We don't want to just do things half-heartedly. We want to treat every part of life as this is where the path is right now. So whatever we're studying and gathering, let this be an apprenticeship of mental clarity so we can really learn and study and understand how things work better. And that when that's complete, we'll know that that's complete.
Love that. I am thinking about this through a recent talk that I gave on the third house. Like I said, I've been looking at all the Vedic perspectives. And one way that they have of talking about the third ninth house dichotomy, which is obviously the third house is where the eclipse is, but we've got the opposition to Saturn in the ninth for Cancers, is between the subjective center of the mind, opinions, personal experiences, psychological impulses, and the kind of the way in which that center of personal mind is so important to our lives. It has to be honored, and at the same time, the ninth house, which is called the Dharma house, is about objective truth. Like, this is the nature of reality. This is the nature of God. This is the nature of karma. And your teachers and the wisdom traditions and the Shastras live in the ninth. And so it's interesting because there's a natural opposition between, well, what do I think and feel and desire and want? And what's my character and temperament? And it's all very subjective. And then this higher sense of objectivity. And it could seem like they're cut off from one another. I could see a Virgo South Node in the third house saying, in order to really adhere to higher truth, I have to suppress my personal nature because it's messy or because it's not appropriate or it's not perfect, or, how much can I shape my personal psychology to meet the requirements of some higher truth? But we also know that repression doesn't accomplish anything. And there's this grace in the universe that allows for us to be unique and subjective little centers of meaning, and that we discover higher truth through an interaction between our personal egos and higher truth. And so I'm looking at this and going is this a time where that conversation between, what is real, what is true in some higher, more objective, transcendental or mystical sense is coming right up against, but what is true for me personally? And how do those things reconcile or meet, or what is the conversation like between those two levels of things right now? That's what That's what jumps out at me with this one.
I have to add something so beautiful. Makes me think about, if a person's working with dandelion plant medicine, right? And there's all the anatomical knowledge of the dandelion, how it grows, when to pick it, how to process it, right? The linear dimensions of dandelion medicine. Then there's the spirit, ninth house Pisces, like the spirit of dandelion. It's a wisdom. It's not physical. It's an essence, and you can't treat it as a physical being. So there can be, if we're getting overly meticulous on the details, we have to kind of loosen up and access what is the underlying wisdom and teachings at the core of everything that we're studying and practicing.
Yeah. Not surprising. My wife is a Cancer rising who's an herbalist with her nodes across these houses. Yeah. And it's just like such a part of her interest in this lifetime, the plant biology and chemistry, but more than anything, the plant spirit tradition, has been the part I think that's been most exciting for her. But both have to go together in a way too. So very fascinating. Well, Cancers, hopefully those thoughts are useful for you. We'll go on now, and here we go. So we've got the solar eclipse, if you're a Leo, in your second house, the opposition going across to Saturn in the 8th, Neptune pretty close there too. So this was one of 3 Arcta houses in Indian astrology that is associated with the material world, and first and foremost security in the material world, and then climbing up from security to abundance or possessions or wealth or enjoyment derived from wealth and assets and resources and things like that. So in the most basic sense, I think of second house eclipses as changes in how you're thinking about your assets, resources in the most basic way. Like, how do you manage your bills? How do you pay for them? What are your revenue streams? What resources do you have? What new resources do you need? What do you no longer need? What's proving to be too much to maintain? Or what things are you trying to take on that you think will grow in the garden and provide you with more resources, but may require a new level of maintenance or work? All of those things very basically. But then from there might be deeper processes happening around how much pleasure or benefit or value can I truly derive from what I have or what I'm trying to build or make or create materially. And I think that deeper part of it is really, really important here, especially with the South Node, where there's an opportunity for something new with the solar eclipse. But the South Node also suggests maybe some level of crystallized insight around past cycles, things that worked and didn't work, things that you could control or couldn't control, things that you could prepare for and couldn't prepare for. And maybe some deeper sense also of you don't have to do it all alone. The 8th house also makes me think about interdependency. Yes, I have self-sufficiency in the second house, but how can I share or carry the load? Or if there's pressures that have been placed on you and you felt obligated to overextend yourself to take on other people's loads or responsibilities, is it time to, renegotiate those boundaries or contracts with other souls? Yeah, I guess I'm going in a lot of different directions, but those are some of the things that jump out at me. What about you, Ari?
The issue with Virgo in the second is, while there's a strong focus on the cultivation of resources, what are the seeds and the ways that we're tending to our garden, there can be a very strong self-limitation in staying in this very narrow world that isolates ourselves from our larger potential or larger scope of experience, of investment. Like, there are people and relationships and experiences and risks that one can take outside of that little bubble of the world that I know and that's safe and secure, that will expand one's experience. So there may be resources that we have, like practical internal resources, that are not developed, or that we haven't been, self-esteem is one core issue with second house dynamics. So there might be a highlighting of, hey, value yourself, value your skills, your resources, that which you have, and invest it, use it, share it. What we hold on to and what we don't share and what we don't circulate stagnates. Be one dimension. Otherwise, if we're just like living in this world of familiarity, where it's like, okay, I got everything that I need, I know where it all is, I know what I'm doing, there can be too much control, and it's just keeping us from the soul path. Like, that Pisces 8th is like surrender and let go and dissolve, where Virgo is like in the second, what do I have? Where do I have it? I want to make sure that I can control it. There's a lot of like possessiveness and control. It's very earthy.
Hmm.
So that's one dimension. The other piece that I would highlight is um, there may be simply, you know, new gifts or skills, like literally and metaphorically, seeds that we've planted might be blossoming now. So new opportunities for growth, for abundance, for expansion, for having more of what we need to do what we want to do simply may be emerging onto the field right now.
Hmm. I love that. Yeah, really nicely put. Um, let me scoot this along. Virgos on the ascendant. Boy, is it a big like house party for Virgos out there.
Yeah, that's
I'm going to
me.
highlight this for you. Go ahead, Ari.
So the issue with Virgo, think of like the natural inconjunct between first, you know, between Aries and Virgo, like these archetypes. I want to be careful. I want to be meticulous and efficient, and check every little dot. And the first house itself is about movement. It's an ongoing process of individuation. So we're putting ourselves forward on an instinctual basis to become, to initiate life experience. So on the one hand, there's a calling to just go, get started, do it. Whatever it is, do it. And we can kind of get stuck and immobilized in this overthinking it. The overthinking it being, I'm not ready. What if I make a mistake? I'm not prepared. So that might be one dimension. Just do it. And then new opportunities, things that we've been wanting to do or procrastinating for a long time. These doors might be opening up for us. We just have to be willing to initiate or make choices. And some of these choices might feel a little scary. The other dimension is there can be a sort of messiness with Virgo in the first house. Like you start and then you make a lot of mistakes, or you open the doors and a whole bunch of new issues make themselves known. Sometimes tending to these issues, like what was that happened? There's something that happened. Oftentimes in my home, something will break, like a glass jar or water or whatever will spill. And in the process of cleaning it up, we end up finding things that were lost. Or in cleaning up the floor from the broken glass, the floor ends up cleaner than when it was before the glass broke, right?
Yeah.
So there's something intending to the messiness that it's like, I don't want to start. It's like all these new issues are going to be revealed and you're going to have a whole bunch of problems with yourself. It's like actually, it's just bringing you into greater congruency. And I think the point is like, there's meaning and purpose to your life and what you can give and share, how you can love and influence and inspire others. Pisces 7, like there's meaning to your life. So don't get stuck on all the issues that you have with yourself and what's going on. Just walk the next step and deal with it as it comes. It's all going to be fine.
I love that. It's such a solid advice. I was thinking a lot of my daughter, who's a Virgo rising, and even a 9-year-old. I can see her working through some of this right now, especially since the last new moon in Virgo, honestly. So, yeah. Well, the only thing I will add to this is that I've been thinking a lot, and I talked about this earlier this week on the channel when I was talking about just 5 archetypal themes to watch for around the eclipse in Virgo, just given Virgo. And one of the things I talked about was the spirit of a child and retaining that spirit even when life initiates us, and it can feel as though the child is gone, or the innocence of the child is gone, or the openness is gone. And there's something about Virgo that's very childlike in my experience,
Huh.
but can can really like freak out and lose the plot when it feels like that innocence or that purity could be stained or tainted or taken away, or it's I messed up and lost it, and there's this way in which the constant lesson across the Virgo Pisces axis is like, yeah, but you can't ever lose it. Like grace, love, forgiveness, surrender, compassion, these things that we end up having to find always bring us back to the fact that you never lost that child. Life may have initiated you. You may have learned about darkness or pain or suffering or impermanence or the mess of life. But that purity is always there. And so like retaining that and being able to loosen control doesn't mean you don't sweep the temple, doesn't mean you don't care about, controlling what you can control to the best of your ability. But there's this bigger perspective that allows for grace so that you never have to worry about losing that child.
Wow.
You know?
I mean, I have to say that because it's so alive in me what you're saying. Accessing for myself the guilt, the unresolved past, things that I've done and said that are just still in me. Often it's like, when will that be cleared? I
Mm,
think Virgo in the first in particular highlights that's not in your control.
yeah.
Like, do the next thing and open to grace, a perspective that sees you with a lot more love than you might see yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. I think this is why also in so many spiritual traditions that put a process of enlightenment in the center of some practices, it's often said it's not the practice that brings the enlightenment. It's the practice that somehow puts you in the position to receive grace. And but the grace is not coming because of a formula that you followed. It's not something that you earned necessarily, right? And there's something when we hear that can, like, the shadow of Pisces might be like, well, there's nothing I have to do then, right? Right? There's no chopping of wood or carrying of water. There's no cleaning of the temple. I can just flow freely without any obligation or responsibility, or my feet just lose the ground and that's fine. So there's this balance always between the two of them.
So beautiful. Brother, I want to check in because I know your timing is short. Where are we at and where should we go from here?
Yeah, let's move on to Libra, and I'll push over just a little bit.
Okay.
I'll be fine. I'll just pause in a minute and just let my next thing know that I'm running a little bit late,
Okay.
but we'll be fine. Okay, so let's go on to Libra, and here we go with the 12th house eclipse opposite the Saturn. Another moksha house in Indian astrology that speaks to those unique moments in life where we lose control of the first house was called the steering wheel or the helm, and the 12th was in Hellenistic astrology was associated with those times where we lose our grip on the steering wheel. And so the loss of identity, the loss of control, the loss of health, the loss of ego, all can be very scary things, but also very freeing and very liberating. And so I think I try to think constructively about the 12th house and eclipses in the 12th as opportunities for deeper surrender, deeper trust. Certainly things can come up with 12th house eclipses that feel like, well, how did that happen? Because it's not always, I don't think it's always easy to understand the logic behind events and seasons of life that are very 12th housey. It can kind of feel like very mysterious the way that things unfold and why they're unfolding, especially when they're stressful or not easy to manage, or we feel like we don't have the normal amount of control that we usually do. But there's something happening here that's of very deep spiritual value, and surrendering some level of control or understanding or logical or rational discernment where I know just what to do, and having to trust or feel our way through something comes to my mind right away. What do you think about this one?
This can highlight, on the one hand, a sort of spiritual masochism, where internally I'm always far from this ideal of purity. It's funny because Virgo can look very pure. Often that's a mask for feeling very messy on the inside. And whereas the polarity of Pisces is like this ideal of perfection that I'm never going to reach. So Virgo in the 12th, there can be this deep sense of, this can highlight the extreme of addiction and where we're escaping or avoiding our path because we just feel so internally far from any kind of meaning or purpose. So if there is some form of escapism or avoidance denial in our life, if there's a way in which we're just sort of neglecting because we don't feel any meaning, like who cares? Why shower? Why brush my teeth? Why eat better? Well, it doesn't matter. It's like this deep sense of I don't matter. I'm nothing, right? That could be just so close from a little pivot to my personal investment in what's purposeful and meaningful is what doesn't matter. I guess like a little reframe to I surrender control. I surrender my ideas and my beliefs and what I've given meaning to. and I'm willing to just accept the life that's given. So meaning and purpose is greater than our own making and our understanding. I think Virgo in the 12th then can highlight we have a function to perform, a holy function, you can say. And it's not for us to judge what it is and whether we're good enough or doing well enough or what it looks like. A lot of things can be coming to close right now. Work that we've given meaning to that was important, maybe it lost its meaning. And on the other hand, there might be something that we're called to actually initiate and move into where something greater than ourselves is going to work through us. Like this, the idea of karma yoga or seva in the true sense of really offering ourselves to a purpose greater than our understanding.
Yeah.
I think it's really highlights the quality of surrender and trusting something greater than ourselves and letting healing happen, not trying to control it.
Yeah. Love that. That is so fitting for the 12th and 6th axis, as well as the Virgo Pisces axis. They both speak to those dynamics. Okay, I'm going to go forward to Scorpio. And here we have the eclipse in your 11th with the opposition to Saturn Neptune across the wheel.
Okay. So let's imagine you're an astrology student and you take a class and you just compare yourself to everyone else that's better. They're using all the cool terms and they say all the right words. There can be this sense of like, I'm not good enough. I'm different. I'm the outsider. I'm the black sheep. I'm not smart enough, or I'm never going to be like those people. There can be this hyper sense of comparison to where our contribution to the world is lacking because we're just not good enough or no one likes us, all these internal ways in which we compare ourselves with others. The invitation here is to honor and value and recognize that we play a role in a greater process with a function that is helpful. So if we're an astrologer, if we're a scientist, if we're working on some kind of project, don't worry about the comparative quality of what you're doing relative to what other people are doing. There's a unique intelligence and brilliance that we can access with Virgo in the 11th house. Let me just take a moment to find the words for this. And to learn to be more detached and less concerned with what you look like, with appearances and with outcome. So to walk our path, and whatever that is for each one of us, we're in service to the collective. We're contributing to humanity. We're improving the conditions of human life in a way that is very indigenous to our own vibration, to our own nature. And we're going to find ourselves maybe coming into community where, everyone's more advanced than us or different, or don't worry, because there's a purpose unfolding there. Or there might be an existing group or an association where your work is done. And if you try to fit into it, that's where all of the distorted Virgo comparisons of I'm so much better than them, which can happen here, or like, I'm never going to be like them. But is that what you're here to be focusing on? Like you might find yourself, leaving the astrology group and joining some kind of new AI, community in Silicon Valley, researching the interplay between whatever. So follow that path, and the communities and the groups will come together, even if it's not quite what you thought it would be.
I love that. Yeah, and I apologize. I hope I was just sending a message really quick to my next appointment to scoot it back a little bit. So I hope I wasn't distracting you. But yeah, I want to just, the only thing I'll add is one of the things that I find so unique about the 5th house in this Indian astrology series I've been doing. I've been diving real deep into the philosophical meanings of the houses from the Vedic perspective, is that we associate the 5th with the creative gifts of your soul, or the act of creativity, a big part of it, right? And what's interesting is that the 5th house was considered to be a place where you can derive joy from the good karma that your soul has accrued in previous lifetimes that will express itself in this lifetime through enjoyable, creative, spontaneous, playful, fun connections with other beings.
Interesting.
and with the outpouring of your creative skills and intelligence, all of which is thought to be in part created from your good karma. So if I play with that a little bit, and obviously all of these are different symbolic lenses to just experiment with, I think, but the solar eclipse in the 11th house opposite Saturn in the 5th might be like, I have a place in a new group, a new community. It's exciting. But for some reason, I'm not being allowed to bring my gifts to bear on that community. Like there's I feel prohibited in my ability to share the joy and creative essence of who I am within this space, even though this space is opening up and there's something maybe kind of exciting about it. And so I wonder about that. Another way of putting it would be, maybe there's something with greater gravitas or seriousness that I am having to mediate between group involvement and my own creative gifts and essence, so that the two can collaborate rather than conflict. Mm-hmm. And I think you said sort of the same thing. So, okay, let's go on to Sagittarius, where we have the solar eclipse in your 10th house. If you're a Sag, the opposition to Saturn and Neptune across the wheel. For me, in the most literal sense, this could be about a change of career direction. It's so obvious. Solar eclipses I have seen in my private counseling practice for many years, coinciding with changes of title, changes of company, entire vocational shifts where I'm just going to do something totally different. I have often found that those tend to constellate more powerfully around transits to planets. So if you have planets in Virgo in the 10th house that the eclipse is landing around, that could be something to consider. I'll just say that because it's not like every 10th house eclipse means a career change. So the one guideline I found is like, if it's close to a planet, often there's more of a distinct change. Still, changes in career can mean a lot of different things. Changes in how you're doing things, how you're approaching things, the level of skill or mastery that you're able to bring to bear on your craft or your trade or your industry or something, the relationship with authority in the workplace, all of those kinds of things. Also, I wonder, we're talking a lot about perfectionism too. I would wonder here about, do I feel like I'm good enough? Is there an evaluation of self-worth in relation to career that's taking place right now? And maybe some need to grant myself a deeper level of forgiveness or acceptance. Like, this is what I can bring to the world. It's not the most heroic, best thing ever. I'm sort of average or a little above average at what I do, but that's good enough,
Right. I love that. There's wisdom in the signature in knowing when to just show up, do your job, as boring or as mundane as it is, or, your responsibilities, even as a parent, just your worldly roles and responsibilities, where someone, I think a client told me once, and it's a beautiful insight, where we are responsible is where we cultivate self-authority, right? Because to show up responsibly for something, we have to be in our own authority and our own command. So accepting whatever work we need to do. And on the other hand, there can be a strong emphasis here on the workaholic drudgery of doing too much. It's like you're never doing enough. You're always doing a lot. Your schedule is overly booked. You're doing way too much. You're stressed, and you can feel weighed down with a deep sense of judgment and inferiority. You'll never be able to advance at 10th house, getting higher up the ladder. You'll never be able to advance in life and get your way out of this lower caste, horrible, classist, whatever system that you are not able to somehow get out of. So it might be highlighting a very existing sort of pessimistic, weighty attitude of internalized judgment and punishment. In that sense, where might there be this opening right now to actually make a very tangible career change or change in the responsibilities or commitments, the roles and the structures that we're establishing in life? That's one piece. The other is, there are graduations that happen in the 10th house. And so if we've done the work and we're not rushing through it, because Virgo, it's tedious, it's whatever that means, whatever is required, it might be hard and difficult, but if it's your work, and it produces joy in the long term, if we're not going to brush it over just to get it done. That's like the immaturity of, I just want to get the job done, but when then we're not thorough and we don't build a proper foundation. So there might be a graduation. Hey, you've done the work and you're done. Time to move on to college. You're done with high school. So that can be expressing right now. And that fourth house polarity, I think, really emphasizes, make sure you're accessing your emotional body, that there's meaning and care and purpose in life beyond just the heaviness of your responsibilities and things like that.
Yeah. Yeah, love that. Really well said. I'm going to move us along to Capricorn. Set it up here for Ari, the 9th house eclipse opposite Saturn and Neptune across the wheel in the 3rd and 4th there.
So when I think of Virgo in the 9th, one example that comes to mind is, in general, in the past several centuries, the Judeo-Christian cosmological lens, where we're learning these ideas, practicing these beliefs, these cosmological frameworks that induce an internal sense of inferiority. So I have a belief, and that belief system keeps me in this place of inadequacy, of not enoughness. And then if we're going to teach that, we're teaching inadequacy. We're teaching not enoughness. We're teaching inferiority. And you can think of 9th house has a strong correlation with nature, and in that sense, religions or practices or tribes that are more oriented towards nature, or religions or philosophies that are less distorted by patriarchal conditioning, right? So you have Virgo in the 9th, being told that what's natural is not good. Okay, you have to put on clothing, or you have to do these practices, and so a lot of this, on the one hand, can be simplifying, clarifying, where we've had a lot of beliefs and ideas that have actually made the journey a lot slower. And it can simply be like a yoga practice or a meditation practice where there's a lot of ritual and things that are just being done. But then the question is, am I tasting the truth? Am I just a slave or a servant to these practices, and it's just kind of keeping me in this, I'm never going to be there? Or is it a practice that works? Like Virgo in the 9th, are we having a direct experience? So it's clarifying our cosmology and our beliefs. Are we repeating things that keep us in a lower state? Or are we actually allowing the spiritual path and the journey of realization to be one that is direct? And so where do we need to make changes or refine or literally let go of, hey, I've been doing this for 20 years, and I just realized I don't actually know if I believe in it, to be able to let go of. But I kept on doing it because my teacher told me, or my religion or my church told me that I have to, right? It could be a simple, and that's that open-mindedness of Pisces in the 3rd. Oh, there's another way of looking at it, right? I can see this differently. And then on the other hand, there can be this, if we're putting our, that grace and effort relationship, if we're putting effort towards something, there's a certain point in which that effort, if we're in right relationship, it sort of relaxes. Something else opens up, and we have an experience, we have an insight. And that's like the point of the Virgo isn't always to be working on the same thing. There can be a shift in our own insight and realization here.
Yeah, I love that. For me, I wonder about, I'll be a little mundane on this way. I'll say new teachers, new forms of education, new academic pursuits, new gurus, new spiritual paths or traditions opening up. Maybe new paths opening up with respect to that realm of higher truth as some insights are crystallizing. I give a simple example with a South Node solar eclipse in the 9th house. Someone comes to a realization that they need to go to rehab.
Yeah.
They go to rehab and they get on a path of a 12-step program. There's a new philosophy, there's a new community, there's a new wisdom tradition, but it's also coming at the time of a kind of, a harvesting of insights that weren't necessarily easy to come by. Like the South Node solar eclipse in the 9th to me is like maybe some hard-earned wisdom that sets you on a new path. That's exciting, but there's been some loss or some letting go or some healing pains that have come along with it. maybe it's not that dramatic, but I could also just see new pathways and crystallizing insights around things like spirituality, religion,
I love that.
philosophy, and learning.
Yeah, I have to add to this, just being honest too, like honest around, do I know if this is true?
Mm.
Is this working for me? Right? Sometimes that honesty is what opens the door to something else that we couldn't have thought of on our own.
Yeah, totally. That's such a
And
good
then
insight.
opens the door, like, okay, I need help. I'm
Yeah,
honest. I have an issue. I
yeah.
need help. And yeah.
I love that. Yeah, that's so important, especially just thinking to me of like one of the virtues of Mercury, who's obviously the ruler of this eclipse, and where we've got this interesting, we haven't really talked about this, but there's this little mutual reception between Venus and Mercury in each other's signs. And to me, I could see there being like a calculus socially. Well, what will other people think, or what will other people do, or managing perceptions, or but a moment of truth is a moment of truth. And
Mm.
it may be that there's social grace somehow built in with the mutual reception of Venus and Mercury that says, just be honest, and it'll actually go over better than you think it will.
Love that.
Okay, let's push on to Aquarius. And here we have, I'm just gonna back this up by 1 day now to kind of get that eclipse looking like it's there in the 8th. And so I gave a talk at Norwalk. We were both there. And I was giving a talk about the 8th house. And the angle that I took on the talk was to really discuss it as a place of karmic debts and contracts with other souls, which is, I think, one of numerous angles that we can take on, on the 8th house. But to me, what's really interesting is the idea that new soul contracts may be possible as something like old agreements are being cleared or resolved. What was the terms of a previous agreement, and why has it come to be done, or how has it fulfilled its obligation or played itself out? And what new arrangements or agreements or exchanges are possible now? That's the thing that comes to my mind most broadly. And then maybe also something about relinquishing sometimes other people's, the 8th house was called the house of the esteem of other people, which meant like how they place value on us, how they confer value upon us, and maybe even gift us with things or give us things because of the value that they place on us for their own subjective reasons. So, for example, inheritance kind of plays out along those lines. I put a certain amount of value on you, maybe out of tradition or preference or whatever, and then I confer money on you when I die. But it's also just the value that other people give to us. But I mean, that can be sometimes a really unhealthy thing. Like we're contorting ourselves to fit other people's expectations, or to try to conform to the shape of their criticisms and their requests that we do this or be this way or that way. So how much of that is good feedback for us, and how much of that should we let go of because we're letting other people kind of beat us up with their evaluations constantly. So those are some of the tensions that come to my mind. What do you think?
I love that you mentioned this idea of a contract changing. So Virgo in the 8th can be, I'm so triggered. This is how hard I'm getting in like the poop. It's like mucky and yucky, and I don't want to have to deal with this shadow content and this stuff. And maybe that's one dimension of it. Just like the Pisces second house polarity does say, hey, be content, be peaceful, be an inner space of expansion and infinity, while you're dealing with this karmic necessity of this requirement, so to speak, to deal with these deeper karmic dynamics that need to be resolved. And what we don't resolve will not go away. But I think this eclipse can be bringing it up. And so while and just kind of playing on that mutual reception piece, if we have, Mercury in Libra in Holstein framework, that would definitely be in the 9th. It can be either in my system, but we're going to have that need for honest communication, right? There might be a lot of relational, hey, talk about the hard stuff kind of thing, So facing it might feel hard and messy and bring up all of our I'm entrapped, or you caused this, and or business deals or investments that we shouldn't have made, or facing it, dealing with it allows for a cleaning up. And the teaching here of Virgo in the 8th is, if you tend to it, that pile of rotting food will become very nutrient rich soil. But we have to tend to it, and properly, if you ignore it, rats come and poop in it, and it makes your whole yard infested, and they come into the house. Like the darkness can spread, and yet the benefit of the darkness spreading is it can induce a crisis state that brings us into awareness of where we got to clean up the act and deal with that hard stuff. So then the contract shift. It's like, okay, we can enter into a new phase because I've cleaned up the past and I've dealt with these more icky. So the other piece that I would add is where there might be a calling to clarify our own power and our agency, and to actually eliminate or step away from something that we're addicted to. Like we can be addicted to the muck. We can be addicted to a never-ending conflict and power struggles, or getting ourselves entangled or entrapped in whatever, or addictions. So this might be a moment of clarity to actually realize I can let go. I don't have to do this anymore. I can simply move on.
Yeah. Yeah. Really nicely said. And that brings us to our final horoscope of the day, which is Pisces, with the eclipse in the 7th and the opposition here to Saturn and Neptune across the wheel.
So in the context of relationship, let's say we're in a service role. Maybe we're a counselor, we're a healer, or we're just in a relationship. In all cases, there's a sense of I'm providing something, I'm giving something. And so then relationship becomes the vehicle and the area through which I'm learning how to serve. So we're improving our ability to listen. We're improving our ability to serve what's truly needed. The issues can be this internal inadequacy or insufficiency. I'm never enough. I'm never giving good enough. And so it can really bring up this overcompensation. If that's happening, I think the invitation of this eclipse is to really change how we're showing up in relationship. As a counselor, as a partner, as a whatever, are there ways in which I've made agreement or made myself available, not because it's what's really needed, maybe people want it of me, but is the core of it because I'm not enough. And if I do more, I'll feel like I'm enough, right? So I'm not going to say no. I'm going to overgive. I'm going to be overly available. So we create this enslaved dynamic within our relationships and the roles and the expectations that we create in life that just keeps us in, because I'm inferior, I'm not enough, and I'm never worthy enough. So if we can see that clearly, there's a cleaning up and a clarifying and a dignifying of our value and our worth, learning how to cultivate more harmony and balance in our relationships, which means sometimes not giving, not being available, being able to say, that's not what I'm here for. And that Pisces first is some element of forgiveness and trust. I have a path to walk, and this path is mine. It's my relationship to the divine. Let me not allow my guilt or my sense of owing you more keep me from the greater infinity of my own being. Right. So that's one dimension. We can also get really stuck in, criticizing other people. So our relationships become never-ending problem solving and conflict resolution.
Right.
You said this, but this is it's like that Pisces. It's like, just let go, forgive, move on. You got a life to live. And so that there can be a letting go of the criticism and always trying to resolve things, kind of seeing, hey, what do you need? What do you want? What's true? Where am I? Letting things be easier. So our relationships and our roles come into greater congruency. And that literally might mean fundamental basic changes in our relationships and new ones or new experiences or new agreements coming in that are just a lot more congruent.
Yeah, absolutely. I could see the Saturn in Pisces in the first house as someone that is resistant to the grounding, forming, shaping, instructive power of others, right? So like other people are meant to give us feedback and help us grow and learn. And the Saturn in the first house could be resistant to all of that and find the presence of a 7th house person whose feedback is genuine, loving, but not maybe some of the easiest things to hear. They could think, well, they're the problem, But on the other hand, you can flip it because these things can go back and forth. And it could be, for example, that, well, a couple different versions of it. Again, it might be as a way of having to avoid myself, I constantly look at someone else's faults or flaws, or I'm resistant to the feedback that someone else gives. But then on the other hand, it could also be that I have such low self-esteem that, you know, I'm allowing myself to become constantly picked on, and I don't have good boundaries and self-worth in place to, you know, push back and say like, enough is enough. So those power, the mirroring is important, but a balance, a give and take, a flow between souls is what I read somewhere recently, to just to put a bow around this, that, and I don't know if this is true or not, because it was one of those things I read on social media. So who knows if this is like grounded in a study or what, but it said something like the hallmark of successful marriages is not how often you have sex to how old you are. And they listed a whole bunch of other things you would think it would be, but instead it was how capable were you of learning to live with and accept someone else's flaws with, and letting go of the urge to try to change them.
Yeah, that's a good one. Wow.
You know, and so I wonder about that with this dynamic back and forth. I like the line you said where you go, we've got a life to live, you know? So yeah, but there's, you know, this could be some very, just on a mundane level, some very powerful shifts. You move in with someone, you break up with someone, you start dating someone, you finalize the divorce. Like a lot of very concrete things will happen for people in relationships that will be sometimes just the beginning of a new chapter of life, that, you know, sometimes just bringing things to closure right now could be meaningful as well. Well, Ari, thank you so much for being here today. I think we made our way through all of this, I thought, in a really nice way. And I just want to be able to tell people how to find you. The number one thing I'm going to tell people to do right away is to check out your YouTube channel, which is Heart and Soul Centered Astrology, where you approach transits in the sky, major developments happening in the sky, just like you'll find on this channel, but from the evolutionary perspective, which in my mind, again, although it's some different techniques and approaches and so forth, you can see that Ari and I have an easy time communicating because we really see the world and the soul from the same perspective. Anything you want to say about your YouTube channel?
Nah, just what you said. Check it out. What I want to say, Adam, is hearing you speak and share your it just brings a smile in my soul. I love this exchange and this collaboration, where I imagine it's in some way, this, just to share with everyone, like this started with my own reflection. Man, I did this talk with someone else during the last eclipse, and it was so nice to not have to hold it all. And then I saw your talk on 5 reasons why you hate doing horoscopic readings, and I reached out. And it's just such a delight to be able to receive your perspective, your wisdom, and it works so well with mine, but it's coming from a different angle. So I just want to express my joy and appreciation for this. And I imagine many people would benefit from that as well.
Yeah, you know, after I did that episode you guys all watched a couple weeks ago on why I hate horoscopes but do them anyway, Ari,
and I resonate with that too.
Yeah, we were laughing. I mean, he was like, you know, I feel you. And then he's like, you know, I found that it helps to share, like do them with other people. It takes some of the load off from having to do it all yourself. And I was like, that is a great, and it seems like very obvious idea. And in fact, I know that to be true because I started bringing in co-hosts from the student community to host the monthly horoscopes. And I was like, well, yeah, of course I should be doing this with some of my other colleagues because it really does lighten the load to make it more of a conversation. When you're expected to just deliver unique insights for each sign in a row, not only is it exhausting to go through all of them and be original and on point, it's, you know, it's just, it's tiring because it feels more performative to me than all the other kinds of content that I create. And so having it in conversation mode has just been awesome. I completely agree. And I feel the same way about your work always.
Yeah. It's fun.
So
and also learning something too, which is wonderful.
Yeah, no, I gain a lot of insight from hearing your perspectives. And because oftentimes they're just like angles that I'm not thinking about. And I'm like, oh yeah, that's really interesting. I like that one. So Heart and Soul Centered Astrology on YouTube. Find Ari's work there, subscribe, and check out everything he's up to. And then if you want to book a reading, take his seminars, his classes, he has full training programs in evolutionary astrology that I promise you are at the very top of the field in terms of the evolutionary curriculum and programs out there. So I couldn't more highly recommend Ari as a teacher of the field of evolutionary astrology as well. That's who I recommend people to first over many years of doing this now. So, so arimoshe.com, you can find him there as well. And Ari, until next time, I really look forward to working with you again, brother.
Me too.
All right. Take it easy, everyone. Bye. Hey, everyone. Thanks for sticking around. I'm excited to tell you about our upcoming program, Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. This is our first-year course in Hellenistic astrology, and it begins again this November. In this video, I'm going to tell you about the course, the format of the course, and how to register. So let's go ahead and get into it. What is this course about? Well, if you are not familiar, ancient Hellenistic astrology is the earliest and original form of horoscopic astrology. All of the subsequent forms and schools of astrology that have existed over thousands of years come from these philosophical and theoretical roots. And so what you're doing when you study Hellenistic astrology is you're going back to understand the why behind absolutely everything. Why were there ever such a thing as houses and signs in the first place? How were the planets ever assigned to rule various portions of the zodiac in the first place? How do you use the categories of essential dignity, and why were they ever created in the first place? If you're someone like me, you like to know the why behind things, because once you understand the why, then you know how to use things more intuitively. So really the point of Hellenistic astrology, in my opinion, is not so much about going back and becoming a traditional astrologer or, just being traditional for the sake of being traditional, as much as it is about grasping the roots of the entire system and paradigm. When you understand those roots, you have more intuition and understanding, which allow for you to be much more artful and fluid in the way that you speak the language of astrology. We call this class Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic because while it is about going back to understand the philosophical, theoretical, technical roots of the tradition, it's also about fluidly bridging those things with modern astrology and all of its most unique contributions. For example, modern astrology has given us so much psychological depth and personal depth. And so in a modern astrological setting, you're going to get the ability to explore your own character, your own psychology, and you're going to be able to utilize astrology for a process of healing and personal transformation. But when you pair that with ancient astrology, and it's almost like predictive karmic analytics, you really have a full toolkit to work with. And so that's also a great mission of ours at Nightlight, is to bridge ancient and modern forms, which is why we call the program Ancient Astrology for the Modern Mystic. So that's just a little kind of overview of the program. If you want to know more about the specifics of the curriculum and of the syllabus, what I encourage you to do is go over to nightlightastrology.com, click on the courses page, go to the first year course, scroll down, and you'll see this over 12 months you'll learn about. And here you're going to see more of a detailed breakdown of the curriculum itself. I can promise you that if you've studied astrology in modern context, but you've never gone back to the ancient roots, while some of these topics may look familiar to you and you go, oh, I've already learned about that. Unless you've studied them from the Hellenistic perspective, I guarantee that you are not going to be familiar with this content. Hellenistic astrology is mind-blowingly new and interesting for most people. And if you've never studied it, again, don't assume that anything on this list is something you're going to be familiar with. In that way, the program is really ideal for a variety of different people, and I'll say more about that in a second. So what is the format of the course? Let's go to that next. Scroll down, and you're going to see that the course includes 30 online webinars that I lead throughout the year. Over the course of a year together, I have 30 classes that are broken into different units of material. In between those classes, we have breakout study sessions with your course director and 2 TAs. They're going to lead you through Q&A sessions and tutoring sessions to make sure that you have a lot of support in between major units of study. In addition, we also have an interactive group forum discussion where you can ask questions year-round and get an answer within a business day in the student forum, where a lot of people also connect and build community. Lots of people in that forum also develop like little meetup groups outside of class. That's very common in all of our programs. It's a very community-loving, warm space where anyone's also welcome. Throughout the course, you're also going to find that for every lesson, if you're just there as a hobby student, you can just listen to the webinars. They're all recorded for you. So if you can't make the live webinars, everything is housed on the website as recordings. I'd say about 40 or 50% of our students are going to be following along at their own pace, whereas the other half might be attending the live webinars. But it's really kind of, if you can attend a few and then 1 week you got to be gone, the recordings are always there. You have lifetime access to everything in the course, so it's not a big deal. For every lesson as well, if you're someone who wants to go really, really deep, maybe you have the intention to practice professionally, this course is set up with an optional certification exam at the end from our school, from our program. So you can, if you want to build that resume and develop the credentials from our programs, you can do that, but it's optional, so you don't have to. And outside of every lesson, we have recommended reading. We have supplemental bonus content, all of which is optional, but it's there for people who might want a lot more, whereas some people will take the webinars themselves, and that'll be plenty. So it's really flexible in that way. Also, this is one program within 4 years of curriculum that are meant to go together. And so most people who come through our first year program will end up taking our second year program, where we develop forecasting and prediction and transit tracking techniques. Our third year program, which is aimed at counseling and psychology. So psychological counseling skills is our third year program. And then the Oracle Within, which is our exploration of the philosophical, spiritual roots of the divinatory oracular tradition of astrology. So there's a lot of material there. We also have another 1 year program in horary astrology for some people who want to add that predictive tool to their toolkit. So there's just a lot of material at Nightlight that this class is actually just one part of, which can be taken standalone, or for some people, they get into it, they're going to love it. You're going to hang out with us for 3 or 4 years worth of content. This program is ideal for a number of different types of students of astrology. I'll say that for starters. So let's see here. I'll stop sharing this. So we have there's a profile of the typical students who come through our courses. One is going to be people who just want a very guided introduction to ancient astrology because you've never had it before. Maybe you're only familiar with modern, and you want that guided, structured approach to learning traditional for the first time. Also, people who are brand new to astrology in general, there's no better place to start than at the roots of the ancient foundations. So whether you're a total beginner or just a beginner to Hellenistic, this is a great place to start. If you are someone who's been around astrology for a long time, but you've never had a guided, structured approach to Hellenistic astrology, again, this is a great place to start. I promise you, Hellenistic is very different than what you're familiar with, and you're going to need a guided and structured approach at some point in time. I also think for people who are looking for a lineage, which means not just a bunch of information, but a practitioner-specific based approach where you get to see a practitioner work with clients. You get to hear how a practitioner has prioritized different techniques and why. You're going to get a structured, spiritually grounded focus at Nightlight as well, where if you're looking for someone who practices astrology but also values grounded everyday spiritual practice, that's Nightlight. If you want a community that's been in the industry for a long time now, this is our 16th year of teaching programs and guiding students through trainings. So all of those things, if they matter to you, this is a great place to study. It's a warm community atmosphere. It's spiritually grounded. It's focused. It's academically rigorous. It's going to provide you the appropriate preparation for practicing professionally, especially if you go through all of our programs. But also for those who are just curious and love astrology for your own personal interest, this is going to be a great place for you to learn and grow and thrive and feel like you have a lot of support around you in the curriculum, the teachers, the community, as you're developing, what might just be a personal interest or spiritual hobby. So that is who it's ideal for. Finally, how you register. You go over to the website. I'm going to take you back there. And it's at the bottom of the first year page. You're going to find that the early bird rate is in effect until October 24th. You can save significantly off the cost of the course when you use the early bird rate, where you can pay in full, or use an early bird installment rate plan. Both are going to save you off significantly off the cost of the course. But also at Nightlight, it has always been our mission to make sure that astrological education is accessible for everyone. So please, if you are someone who would love to take this course, but maybe you can only afford a small amount of tuition per month, use the tuition assistance. It is there. All you got to do is plot, you fill out the little form, you tell us your situation. If you're on a fixed income, if you're on a limited income, if you're part-time, if you're in between jobs, if you don't make a lot and you're on that fixed budget, we understand. We don't want people to hurt themselves trying to study something that is spiritual that we feel should be very accessible for everybody. So if you're someone who could use a little help to make this program happen, for whatever reason, maybe you're a single parent or you're on disability or you're retired or you're on a fixed income, whatever the case is, use that tuition assistance. Also, people in other countries who have extreme, exchange rates. We get it. So just use the tuition assistance and we'll be glad to make sure that the price point is accessible. For us, as a spiritual topic, we're a business at the end of the day, but we believe that this is a spiritual topic. And so accessibility has been a part of our model for 16 years now. We've never not had one of our training programs with affordable sliding scale-based prices for people who need it. So please take advantage of that. It's all there for you. I hope to see you in classes soon. And if you have any questions about the program whatsoever, direct them to us at info@nightlightastrology.com. And I hope to see you all coming up here in November. Take it easy, everyone. Bye.